and welcome to Flux Motorsport. You're joining us just slightly behind schedule here at the Brands Hatch GP circuit, just in time for the Formula Renault qualification session. As you can see, currently 16 minutes remaining of this session. The guys just getting themselves out on track. A few of the drivers able to set a hot lap in the first 4 minutes, but currently most guys looking like they're just in the pit lane making some final adjustments ready for today's race. A very warm welcome to everybody that does end up watching this stream. I am Murphy GBR and I'm going to be your commentator for this morning's session. As you can see, really restricted grid here after some catastrophic failures from our enlisted drivers. Various bits and pieces going on, but unfortunately we've had around about 7 drivers drop out from this. The grids will look to fill out as we progress into week 2, but a really restricted lobby due to either technical or life issues, it seems, and it's going to be just a bit of a battle between 5 drivers on track at the moment. May well be a 6th. It looks as though we've got one guy that's struggling to enter the lobby. That is Taijo 1212. But as for now, Dirk Diggler currently sitting on the top spot. Does look as though we've got Speedy Gone Hog currently in second, about 2.5 seconds away from the pace at the moment. But we have got Bruce Law, who's possibly going to be one of the favourites for the championship, just exiting the pits now, out on his warm-up lap. We'll wait and see what he can put in as this session progresses. And as I mentioned earlier, very warm welcome, and it is a warm welcome from this Brands Hatch circuit down in the southeast of England, just outside of Dartford. Sun is shining for today's session. It's currently around about 11 o'clock in the morning in our simulated session, and track temperatures are just starting to creep on up. It's going to be a hot one all day long, as the weather is blisteringly hot in the southeast of England throughout today. So track temperatures are going to be an aspect for today's race. They are going to progress on through and keep on creeping up. Simulated session times are 12 o'clock, I beg your pardon. I did mention 11 o'clock, that's our practice session time. Qualification begins at 12 o'clock and it is real time, so they're going to have 20 minutes worth of qualification. Brings us to around about 20 past 12 in the simulated session, and then we're going to progress on to 1 o'clock in the afternoon for today's race. 45 minutes of action, no mandatory pit stops, but the accelerated tyre wear is enabled in this, so the drivers are going to have to try and balance their speed and precision to try and get as much life as they can outside of these tyres, just to try and minimise any stoppages as they progress on through. As we see Speedy Gone Hog there gaining all wrong. I think that was potentially in Westfield and eating a whole lot of wall to pay for it, as we see Bruce Law just barreling past him. It looks as though he's on his first hot lap. We can see the time set 1 minute 23.3. That would have been his out lap from the pits. Let's see what he can put in this time around. One thing that you can always count on is that Bruce Law will have practiced tweaking his setup in time for this one. He also practices in a variety of weather settings, as we see him there coming in 1 second below Dirk Diggler for this one. Dirk Diggler, new as all of our drivers to this Flux Motorsport Formula Renault Championship. Actually, the perfect start to the season for him. He actually grew up just around the corner from Brands Hatch and knows the circuit pretty well. I think he's been around it a few times, and very keen motorsport enthusiast. He quite often gets himself to all sorts of events, from Formula 1 to British Touring Car Championships, and pretty partial to a little bit of rally, if memory serves me correct. 45-year-old currently living in Kent, so not too far away from this either. He just has to cross over the Thames to get down to Dartford, where this Brands Hatch circuit is located. Let's see whether or not he can make any improvements. 11 minutes remaining of the session. So we have got the availability for these drivers to get themselves out on track. CMC F1, our only American driver inside this championship series when the lobby is full. Yet to set a lap at the moment. Still sitting in the pit lane. I believe he's probably just making some adjustments. Just before we managed to get on stream, I could hear some expletives coming from him. I don't know whether or not he was struggling with his setup or potentially just getting a little bit blocked, but we'll wait and see what he can put out on track. Hopefully able to set a lap in the 10 minutes and 40 seconds remaining of this qualification. So whilst we're watching Bruce Law absolutely hoon it around this circuit, let me give you a little bit more information, as this is our first live broadcast. We did intend to get some broadcast out for our GT1 Championship on Thursday evening. Unfortunately, some technical issues also plaguing us there with that one. The race has since been uploaded. We're just needing to transfer it over from one YouTube account to another one, so we will notify you when that goes up. But let me tell you a bit about what we do. We are a clean racing community, but we are focused on just a passion for motorsport. Currently racing on PlayStation 4 on the Project Cars 2 platform, and looking to expand that as we see Bruce Law there late on the brakes and kicking that tail out. Didn't look as though he lost too much, but he has returned to the pits. So as I say, yeah, we are a clean racing community. We focus on realistic motorsport. That is what drives us all. And a passion for just having a good race with a good bunch of blokes and ladies, of course. If you want to find out a little bit more information about what we do, or you want to try and join up into a PlayStation 4 clean racing community for Project Cars 2, head on over to www.FluxMotorsport.com and you'll find all the information that you need there just to join us up. Website is currently in development, but you'll find the bare bone of information about what we do just until we get that updated for you. So currently offering 3 different full-time championships. As I mentioned earlier, the GT1s feature on Thursday nights at 8 o'clock PM around the UK time. And our Formula Renault Championships, which is what you're able to watch now, is live and direct to you 10:30 every Sunday in the morning. Just giving you enough time to enjoy the racing that we're able to put on for you, just in time for any feature motorsport in real life that may feature in the afternoon, especially today's racing around Silverstone for the 70th anniversary of the F1. That is bound to be a thrilling race around there. Hopefully a little bit more action than we got last week around Silverstone, and I'm sure the new tyre choices are definitely going to play into that one. And then Sunday evening at 8 o'clock PM, we are actually going to be taking the GT3s around the Silverstone circuit, so letting that dust settle after the F1. Hopefully they've put plenty of rubber down on track as we pit up our GT3 drivers around that infamous circuit. So I will also be commentating on that one. I'm afraid your Sundays are going to be plagued with my voice for now, but we should have a co-commentator for that one. Other member of staff on the moderator team here at Flux Motorsport, the console. He'll be joining me as my number 2 inside the commentary box. So we're currently watching Speedy Gone Hog, looking to try and make some improvements. He's around about 5.4 seconds away from Bruce Law at the moment. We did see Tyjo, who's our Formula Renault driver that was struggling to get into the lobby. I saw him pop up very briefly. It looks as though he's since been disconnected from the lobby. Hopefully he'll manage to sort that out in the remaining 7 minutes of the session. Speedy Gone Hog, though, making small improvements, and that will count as he starts to rack up the laps around this circuit. It can be a tricky one to get right, especially through Hawthorne, Westfield and Dingle. Trying to get your lines right inside these Formula Renaults and trying to balance the drag reduction system, DRS, to try and maximise your speed potential can be a bit of a tricky thing. And it looks as though they're Speedy Gone Hog right on the level of grip, stepping out the back end, managing to hold it spectacularly. Didn't look as though he lost too much speed either. So it'll be interesting to see how he gets on this time around. It does look as though Tyjo 1212 has been able to rejoin the session as well. So currently 5 drivers on track and we may well have a sixth with Lecky 2000, another member of the staffing team here at Flux Motorsport, looking to stand in just to try and fill out this grid ever so slightly, acting as a ringer. In future races, he is going to be joining me in the box here and acting as my race director, giving me all of the camera feeds so that we can try and smooth out our interface here and get rid of the rather annoying broadcast overlays that are currently on your screen. So apologies for that, but what we wanted was on-track action, and Lecky 2000 pretty capable in these Formula Renaults, so he's definitely going to try and stick it to all drivers on track. CMC looks as though he's still struggling with his setup. 5 minutes remaining of this session and still yet to set a lap time. Taijo 12:12 though, he is on track at the moment, looking on his outlap. We'll wait and see what he can put in. In fact, once we continue with speeding on Hog around this lap, we'll switch over to Taijo and see how he's getting on. Pretty capable driver. Raced with him previously inside the Formula Renaults. He is actually our only gamepad player inside this lobby. All of the rest of the drivers on various different racing rigs. But Taijo 12:12 struggling ever so slightly with the gamepad just to try and keep his tyre wear down from the chat that's gone on inside the lobby. So we'll have to wait and see what happens in regards to him and his tyre wear. I think quite a few drivers looking to try and get away with a one-stop strategy. I don't think with the temperatures that we're getting today we're going to be able to see any no stops. I think it's mainly going to be 1 or 2 stops, and that is just provided that all of our drivers avoid damage. So Flux Motorsport offers a performance impacting damage simulation. Anybody that's driven these Formula Renaults will know that they are very delicate little beasts, and the slightest tap you will lose a wheel, so we wanted to try and avoid that and instead went for performance impacting. That being said though, any contact that you have with a wall or another car is going to heavily impact your aerodynamics or your suspension, so you do want to avoid any form of impacts out on track. Looks as though Taijo there potentially struggling with his setups, not sure what's happening. We've seen him exit and enter back into the pits. Let's see whether or not he can get it sorted this time around. So Bruce Law currently sitting on provisional pole position with 3.5 minutes to go. Currently lapping a 1 minute and 9 seconds, and let me tell you ladies and gents, that is pretty darn quick. We've then got Dirk Diggler currently sat in second. He's just under 2 seconds away from Bruce Law at the moment. Speedy Gone Hog then sat 4.5 seconds away from our provisional pole sitter, with Lecky, Taijo and CMC yet to set a lap. Taijo and CMC out on track at the moment. I will be anticipating a very last dash effort from Lecky. Quite often leaves it to the last minute. Comes in with just one hot lap to try and put himself up there. As you can see from the on-screen information though, currently watching Taijo. Looks as though he's just about to come around Westfield. Let's see how his braking is for this. No locking up it seems, so it looks as though he's got that one pretty well dialed in as he approaches Dingle. On the run down to Stirling. Still warming up those tyres, but he's looking pretty smooth as it happens. Currently out on his outlap though as he goes around Clark just to come up to the Brabham Straight. So it's hot lap time now for Taijo. That's why he's 11 seconds off the pace at the moment. Watch this space though, it will come down, I'm sure of that. Lecky looking as though he's still in the pits. I think he might well be starting from his default position. CMC doesn't look as though he's managed to get in a lap either. Looks as though he's really struggling. As we see Taijo there just over the track limits. Track limits are enabled for this one, so the race director will be applying any time limits, any time penalties for any breaches. Brands Hatch isn't too harsh as some of the other circuits are, but it looks as though this lap is going to be compromised for Taijo. Seen him get onto the grass a couple of times, and he is going to have to lift off that throttle to stop himself from spinning that car around. I'm not expecting this one to be too fast. In fact, it looks as though he's come off the throttle entirely and gets right back on it. So we're going to see an improvement from Taijo, but I don't think it's going to be a dramatic one. I can see him currently sitting behind Speedy Gone Hog. Let's have a look though. Comes in just above Speedy Gone Hog. 1.3 seconds the difference between those two. Speedy Gone Hog currently inside the pits as we see Lecky and CMCF1. Lecky has since returned to the pits, but CMCF1 is currently out and really struggling with the rear of that car. He is currently on an outlap. Looks as though Taijo is just about to approach him. In fact, perhaps not. Perhaps Taijo, yes, he has indeed gone back to the pits. So CMCF1, he is going to struggle to get a lap in. 20 seconds remaining. He is only just about reaching the halfway point of this Brands Hatch GP circuit. So I think this is going to step him just one above Lecky, just on an outlap alone. But he's not going to see any improvement away from that. As mentioned earlier, ladies and gents, 45 minutes of action to come out once qualifying has ended. Looks as though Bruce Law is going to take pole position as we see CMC absolutely eats it there. I wonder whether or not he'd forgotten to close that DRS. We'll have to wait and see, but yeah, that's going to really compromise his race if he ends up doing that once the race begins. As soon as he returns back to the pits, we'll get this race underway. 7 seconds remaining of qualification, and then we'll be hopping right to it. So your qualification results, Bruce Law tops it out. He gets pole position with a 1 minute 9 seconds .063. Dirk Diggler ends up doing enough for second place, just 1.9 seconds away from the qualification pace of Bruce Law. Taijo ends up getting into third place, our late arrival into the lobby. Speedy Gone Hog does enough for fourth place, and then Lecky ends up sat in fifth. Looks as though we've lost CMCF1. We'll have to see whether or not he features. He doesn't indeed feature in the lineup for this one, so looks as though he's left the lobby, unable to get it out on track. So these guys will now have 2 minutes to set up their car, ready for tonight's race. And then we'll be underway for 45 minutes of on-track action with a very much reduced grid here at Brands Hatch GP. Let me know your predictions. I'd love to see them. Is it going to be Bruce Law romping away with it, or is Dirk Diggler going to provide an upset? I wouldn't put Taijo out the race either. He had some good finishes in previous championships that I've seen him in the Formula Renaults, so we'll have to wait and see with that one. Just a couple of minutes now, ladies and gents, and we'll be ready for the lights here. Looking for no on-track drama, especially with a reduced grid. Don't want to see any contact going in between these guys. We do have a fully comprehensive set of rules and regulations that these guys must adhere to, and all of our drivers as well operate under a race license. So they'll be wanting to avoid any points going onto that race license, to avoid any future sort of qualification bans or even restrictions from the championships if they rack up enough points on the race license. A few final adjustments now, getting the fuel levels set, and the race strategy is going to be very crucial for today's race, as track temperatures will look to improve. Weather forecast looks as though we've got a little bit of light cloud, but it is going to go into some hazy sunshine predicted as we get ready for today's action. Here come the lights. And away they go. Brands Hatch, plenty of smoke off the line, but Bruce Law looks as though he gets it hooked up. Dirk Diggler slots himself into second. Taijo looks as though he runs ever so slightly wide there, and that's going to allow Lecky to come on through. Looks as though Speedy Gone Hog currently sat at the back of this grid. Let's jump into the chase cameras. We've lost someone. It looks as though we've lost Lecky there at Druids. So Lecky falls back to the back of the pack. He's going to have plenty of time to catch it up, but currently on board with Speedy Gone Hog, as we can see the lead that Bruce Law has pulled out has been exceptional already. He's way ahead. So let's jump on to the trackside cam now with Bruce Law. Let's watch as he comes through this section of right-handers up onto the back of this Brands Hatch GP circuit, and the lead he's pulled out has been astronomical. Within just half a lap, he's managed to get himself 2.2 seconds, and it is climbing right up. So Dirk Diggler currently battling with Tyjo. Looks as though Speedy Gone Hog is a couple of seconds away from that, but there's plenty of racing to come as Lecky, that mistake at Druid's costing him big time. Currently sat around about 13 seconds away. I wonder whether or not he's picked up any damage from that. Couldn't see any contact with the wall, but I just saw the rear of his car spinning around, so we'll have to wait and see whether or not he makes a pit stop at the end of this one. In fact, let's have a look trackside and see whether or not we can see any damage to the front. In fact, yep, it looks as though he's lost his front end. I'd expect him to come in for damage repairs. That's going to be a lengthy one for Lecky. But as I mentioned, plenty of time left in this race, and we are expecting pit stops from most drivers out on track. So Bruce Law currently sitting 3 seconds ahead, but this race development between Dirk Diggler and Tyjo looks as though it's hotting up. Tyjo currently sitting within the slipstream. DRS will be open for both of these drivers. So Tyjo's going to have a bit of an upset in regards to his downforce there, running through the dirty, turbulent air of Dirk Diggler, and it looks as though it's just pushed him ever so slightly wide, just touching a little bit of grass. That is going to cool down and muck up those left-hand tyres for Tyjo. And we see it there again, running onto the grass. Looks as though he kept it onto track limits, but his tyres are going to be upset if this progresses through. And the dirt on those tyres is going to heat up. It's going to cause a little bit of extra friction, and it is going to increase that already accelerated tyre wear. Looks as though Speedy Gone Hog is keeping within reach of these guys. He's 5.7 seconds away at the moment, but Tyjo looks as though he's losing little bits of time here and there. As you see Lecky still in the pits getting that car repaired, just exiting now to rejoin the track. Currently sat 1 minute and 25 seconds away, so over a lap away as the rest of the pack passed him. Within the pits, he's going to have a lot to do, but he's a more than capable driver to make up some of that gap. You didn't see what sort of pace he was setting within qualification, just didn't have enough time to set out enough laps. But I can guarantee you he will be able to hook some together and bring that deficit down for sure. Bruce Law still managing to gain on his lead at the moment, ahead of Dirk Diggler, who's sat in second place, who's still managing to just pull away from Tyjo 12.12. Tyjo 12.12 currently 5.5 seconds away from the leader, and currently around about 1 second away from the second place of Dirk Diggler. Let's move on over to Bruce Law. We'll jump in on board with him for now. Jump into his cockpit cam and get a full view of what we have here. So I'll leave up the current split times. You can see how delicate he balances his turning for this one. He is going to be managing his tyres as much as possible. Building up such a lead, it gives him such an advantage to try and ease off ever so slightly, get those tyres managed and try and push for that crucial zero strategy. Pit stops here are going to be around about 20 seconds at the best of times. We're probably looking, if you're going to change all four corners of tyres, it's going to be more like 27 to 30 seconds. And if you've got any damage included as well, that time's just going to rack up, as we saw with Lecky 2000 to replace that front end. Looks as though he left it into the gravel at Druids. So we'll maybe be able to catch a glimpse of that as we see Bruce Law just coming around Clark Curve onto the Brabham Straight. DRS is going to be fully open. He's going to be pushing that car as much as possible. Maybe utilising the red line, depending on how he's got his car set up. You can see a cone there. Can we see Lecky's front end? Not currently, so not sure whereabouts he lost it. Let's jump back trackside and get the splits back up on this one, as well as our overview. So Bruce Law currently holds nearly 7 seconds lead to Dirk Diggler, who's sat in second place. Looks as though Tyjo has lost quite a bit of time. He's currently around about 5 seconds behind the second place of Dirk Diggler. In fact, Taijo's lost even more. I do beg your pardon. That's Speedy Gone Hog sat in third place. So Speedy Gone Hog has managed to take it away. Taijo doesn't look as though there's any damage to that car. So I wonder whether or not he's just had a bit of an off. And maybe a slowdown penalty included as well with that. But wonder whether or not he's got any suspension damage. He's certainly struggling for grip, as it seems. See the front of that car bouncing around as well. Wonder whether or not that's a potential of lag. Here's a Filipino driver, so he's playing from quite a distance away from the rest of the lobby. All the rest of the lobby currently based within the UK after the exclusion of CMC F1. So perhaps ping rate's just playing a little bit of a factor to this, but I do wonder whether or not his aerodynamics is set quite low for this one. This is quite a high downforce corner, especially as you're coming through Pilgrims, Hawthorne, Westfield and Dingle. Really need to utilise the downforce for this, as well as actually the approach to Druids, which we're currently watching Taijo on. Aerodynamic downforce is definitely going to help with your braking, as that car will look to unsettle as you approach the top of the hill. You are approaching it around about 4th or 5th gear at quite high speeds, and then need to get hard onto the brakes on the approach up the hill just to try and get your line correct for Druids. Let's flip on over back to Bruce Law, our current race leader, with 38 minutes remaining of the session. Looks as though he's nice and comfortable at the moment with a 10.8 second lead to the second place of Dirk Diggler. Speedy Gone Hog though, looks as though he's settled into his current pace. He's managing to maintain around about the same pace as Dirk Diggler. In fact, just as I was saying that, potential commentator's curse, we saw him lose around about half a second. So Dirk Diggler and his familiarity with the track is certainly paying off. And that definitely pays dividends for any potential sim racing driver. If it's one piece of advice that I can give to anyone, it is get to know your track. It's almost as crucial as getting to know your car. We do operate without any racing lines on, or most track assists are turned off. All of our racing series use the realistic driving aids, so you will be driving with whatever driving aids the car has. In this case, I think it might just be only ABS within the Formula Renaults. No traction control to deal with, so it's all down to the balance and control of the squishy human in the middle of the cockpit. But these guys look to be settling in quite well. Speedy Gone Hog, quite new to the world of sim racing. Looks as though his passion for motorsport has definitely pushed him forwards though, and he'll be more than happy with a third place finish if he can hold on to it come the end of this. Looks as though Lecky, since struggling for pace, it looks as though he's managing to hold about that 1 minute 35 second distance behind Bruce Law at the moment. He's currently got just over a minute to Taijo, as Taijo looks to come into the pits. Let's have a look at this one. Let's see whether or not it's a quick pit stop just for tyres, or whether or not he's going to have some repairs as well. Doesn't look as though it is tyres, so it looks as though he's coming in for repairs. See how long he's held here for. Looks to be quite a long stop, so that would explain why he was losing so much onto the corners. I wonder whether potential suspension damage was causing him to run off the track at those key moments that we could see, but he is back away now, so it couldn't have been too bad. Quite a lengthy stop there, but it looked to be less than a minute for those repairs, so looks as though he's made that crucial decision to come in at the right time before it gets too costly. Full repairs, just to give you some context for those that aren't too familiar with the Project Cars 2 damage system. If you want to 100% most of your suspension components and your aero, you're probably looking at around about 3 minutes worth of stoppage to get all of those repairs done. Any substantial engine and gearbox damage, that is going to creep up to around about 5 minutes, I think, is the longest that I've ever had to stop from any big hits. But so Taijo there making quite a wise move. It is going to put him surely within the sights of Lecky if Lecky can start to hook these laps together. You can see him there lapping 1 minute 13.4s last time around, Lecky. Let's have a look at the timings. Does look as though Taijo's got himself a 10-second penalty. That's going to sting. I think that might well be for the track limit breaches that have racked up, and he's just kept his foot in for those, so that's definitely putting him within the sights of Lecky. But due to the low starting grid that we've got here, all of these drivers, so long as they finish the race, are going to be looking at getting some points on the championship standings board, and that is going to give them a large advantage ahead of all of the rest of the drivers when they rejoin coming into week 2. Race 2 in the Formula Renaults next Sunday is going to be around the Hockenheim GP circuit. That one is going to be just as action-filled, I am sure. So let's focus on today's action here at Brands Hatch. We have got Bruce Law romping away with it with a 16-second lead to Dirk Diggler at the moment. Taijo looks as though he's come into the pits again. Not sure what's happened there. We can see. I wonder whether or not he's eaten the wall. It does look as though he's going in for damage repairs again. That is definitely going to cost him. It's given Lecky the current 4th place. Let's have a look at the timing boards. His penalty currently sits at 10 seconds, so Lecky moves up into 4th place after Taijo has to make a stop, a double stop, lap after lap. He's definitely going to want to try and sort that out for the rest of the championship. 8 races within Flux Motorsport's Season 1 championships. That is in all of our championships. So the GT1's last season, GT1's last race around, had a fantastic race. I was actually involved in that one. Really tough work within those classic GT cars. And it turned out to be an absolute belter of a race. We do apologise that we couldn't bring it to you, but that will be uploaded onto YouTube very shortly on the Flux Motorsport channel. Be sure to subscribe to the channel to make sure that you don't miss any of the action, especially when we have any technical glitches such as this one. But the GT1s were featured around the classic Nürburgring GP circuit on Thursday. Definitely one of my favourites, and it certainly appeared to be one of the favourites for most of the drivers on track. We had a fantastic race around there. But the GT3s, as I mentioned, around Silverstone later on tonight. Join us then at 8 o'clock PM UK time. Adjust your time settings according to wherever you're watching inside the world. Taijo looks as though he's still in the pits, so not sure what he did to that car, but it must have been substantial. He must have had to limp it home with the amount of damage that he suffered. And this brings us and reaffirms the point that I mentioned earlier. If you get substantial damage to any corner of this car, if it starts to get around about 100% damage to your suspension, engine or gearbox, you're going to be sat in that pit box while they do the repairs for a number of minutes. So Bruce Law continues to reign supreme in the top spot with Dirk Diggler in second. Dirk Diggler now 20 seconds behind the race leader. Speedy Gone Hog sat in 3rd place, just 9 seconds now behind Dirk Diggler, so he's losing time but not too much. As we see Taijo now exiting the pits, a couple of laps down from the overtaking Speedy Gone Hog there onto the approach to Druids. Let's have a look at his line onto this one. We can see the back end just wanted to step out, but that looks to be good as he gets the power down onto the run up to Surtees. Running perfectly wide there, just keeping his left-hand tyre just within the his right-hand tyre just within the confines of track limits. Getting the power down completely, and we'll see his DRS open at this point on the approach up to Paddock Hill. Want to close that DRS, slight lift off, and then get that power down to try and maximise his aerodynamic downforce. He's going to have to brake for Westfield and Dingle though. Here and there, just stepping down one gear and back onto the power. DRS is likely to be open again as he comes into Stirling. On the approach to Clark Curve, one of my least favourite on this Brands Hatch GP circuit. It's so tough to get right and maximise your line and your speed come to the end of the Brabham Straight. Looks as though Taijo is managing to maintain his position, so hopefully he can keep it on the black stuff, away from any walls or gravel traps now, and that'll be his final stop of the day. He has got 30 minutes remaining though, so he's going to have to try and take it easy on those tyres. So it's going to be the compromise between putting the hammer down and getting any potential for fastest lap. Remember, 1 point gained for pole position and a bonus point as well gained in the championship standings for the fastest lap of the session. So Taijo will look to try and recover his pretty woeful two-stop race with this one by trying to collect up any bonus points that he can. However, he's going to struggle with the current race pace of Bruce Law, currently setting 1 minute 10 second .9, and that is race pace, not too far away, just around about 1 second, maybe a little bit more in relation to this qualifying pace. And he now has 28 seconds ahead of Dirk Diggler, who looks as though he's lost ever so slightly a bit of time to Speedy Gone Hog. As we see Taijo there, looks as though he ran very close to the inside wall, just coming around the Brabham Straight there. I thought he was going to eat it once again, and that would have been another costly pit stop for sure. He needs to try and make sure he maintains his concentration. And he is on a gamer pad. Remember, I mentioned earlier, he's the only driver to be on the pad. All the rest of our field on a steering wheel of some sort. I think most drivers on a G29 at the moment. There is also the fact that Bruce Law and Dirk Diggler, I think, are opting for the Thrustmaster T300s, I believe. So let's have a look where he is now. It looks as though he's still behind Speedy Gone Hog, not losing too much, but that does look as though Dirk Diggler is just on the approach. Taijo is going to have to wait until Dirk Diggler gets up to a reasonable amount of time and then move aside for him. In fact, that is almost the perfect time. Instead he brings over a little bit of dirt onto track. I'm sure Dirk Diggler won't be happy about that, but Taijo is under blue flag conditions, so we'll wait to see him move away at the earliest and safest convenience, just to make sure that he doesn't affect Dirk Diggler, who is trying his best to chase down Bruce Law, but it looks to be a frivolous task. 33 seconds now that lead after 15 laps with 27 minutes remaining. So Lecky, after his early pit stop, finding himself 1 minute and 50 seconds behind the third place of Speedy Gone Hog. Speedy Gone Hog, as debutant in the Formula Renaults, looks to be actually holding his own. It'll be interesting to see how well he does when this grid fills out more. Where is Dirk Diggler gone? We saw him approaching Taijo. It looks as though maybe Taijo has been able to pull away a bit of a gap. Look at our timing board here. Dirk Diggler managing to hook them together. Perhaps it wasn't Dirk Diggler. Was it Lecky that was sat behind him? It was indeed. I do beg your pardon, ladies and gents. Looks as though the white cars have flummoxed me here. So Dirk Diggler was just coming around that final sector, so it's Lecky that's behind Taijo at the moment. Dirk Diggler looks to have picked up his pace ever so slightly and extended that gap just ever a touch to Speedy Gone Hog, currently sat in third position. Bruce Law romping away with it still, 36 seconds the lead now, with 25, just under 26 minutes remaining of this session. You can see the red indicator under Taijo's name there in the left-hand side. Looks as though he's getting even more track limit warnings. Currently sat with a 10-second penalty. So we will have to slow down to avoid any further time penalties being applied by the race director. To wait and see how this one goes. Let's get back on board with our race leader though. Looks as though he's got into that consistent concentration that is required for these 45-minute races. Any momentary lapse or close encounter with the walled kind will cost you big time, as I learned in the GT1s. Cost me a couple of places. I had to quickly claw them back after a momentary lapse of concentration, lock up on the brakes and a rather hefty bump with the wall, forcing me to pit. In fact, it's Lecky now back into the pits. Let's have a look what this is for. I'm assuming it's for damage again, because those tyres aren't too old. Only 17 laps fresh at the moment. We don't see any tyre changes, so it looks as though it is just a brief stop for damage repairs. He does get himself away, so interesting one that. It didn't look as though there was much damage. I just wonder whether or not it was a little bit of suspension causing a little bit of upset, and maybe Lecky figuring that a quick pit stop will mean that he can put in some quick laps for the remaining 24 seconds of this session. So Speedy Gone Hog looks as though he's lost around about a second to the second place of Dirt Diggler, but still managing to hold his own there. Maybe a little bit of commentator's curse. We see him just lose an extra half a second. It looks as though these two guys are sort of cat and mousing that split time between each other. As we flip over to Tyjo, let's see whether or not he's managed to get that car stabilised and jump into his cockpit. Let's see what he's seeing at the moment. You see a few adjustments being made, and this is the telltale sign of a gamepad player. Constant small adjustments, as it's hard to maintain your thumb position on an analog stick. So after having raced with Tyjo quite a bit, he is very competent with the gamepad. It'd be really interesting to see what happens if we put him on a wheel, that's for sure. As we can see now, the haze in the sunshine, the earlier clouds and the high temperatures looks as though it's creating hazy conditions here. Track temperatures are still going to be high on track, so tyre wear is still going to be pretty crucial. But we'll have to wait and see whether or not it affects any drivers. Currently, Bruce Law, Dirt Diggler and Speedy Gone Hog currently set for a zero-stop strategy. Have to wait and see how the lap times are affected. We can see that, in fact, it looks as though I spoke just at the right time. We've now got Dirt Diggler coming in for what I can assume to be tyres. He was saying that he's able to get around about 15 to 16 laps out of the tyres before they need changing. Doesn't look as what he has though. Is it just a damage repair for Dirt Diggler? Looks as though it is. I wonder whether or not we've missed a potential mistake there, catching up on a little bit of wall, and that's allowed Speedy Gone Hog into second place now. Speedy Gone Hog's going to want to try and put that hammer down to capitalise on his lead as much as possible. Currently sat around about 21 seconds, as we can see there from the information in the middle of your screen. Have to wait and see how this one progresses, as Dirt Diggler is potentially going to come up with some competition. No, he's not going to come up with competition from Lecky. It was just the timing boards waiting. Dirt Diggler currently has around about 1 minute and 4 seconds ahead of the fourth place of Lecky. Lecky having to make 2 stops. Tyjo also having to make 2 stops, but one of those stops was absolutely huge. So Bruce Law currently and remaining in first place at the moment. On lap 20, 21 minutes remaining until we get the checkered flag here at Brands Hatch. Speedy Gone Hog now currently sat in second place, and this will do his championship standings the world of good as we go into race 2 around Hockenheim next week. If he can manage to maintain that position, can't see any reason why he can't at the moment, as we see Bruce Law comes in for what I can only assume to be tyres. Doesn't look as though his lap times have fallen off, so I don't expect any mistakes. Tyres will be changed, and that leads me to believe that perhaps the glitchiness of Project Cars 2 just not showing those tyres being changed, and Bruce Law gets away with a quick pit stop there. Not going to cost him much at all. He's definitely not going to come under any pressure from Speedy Gone Hog. We're just going to see that lead diminish ever so slightly. Currently sat at 35 seconds, and it's going to be extended out as Bruce Law gets the hammer down. In fact, you can see there it's dropping down as he returns to the track at around about 29 seconds. Keep an eye out on that though. I'm sure it's going to creep up as soon as Bruce Law finds his momentum once again. Let's have a look over to Speedy Gone Hog. All of these drivers currently within quite a distance of each other, so no close racing at the moment. Whether or not it's for position or whether or not it's just in terms of track position. We'll follow Speedy Gone Hog around and have a look at his lines that he's taking. He's just coming through Hawthorne on the approach up to Westfield. In fact, no, sorry, that was Dingle as he breaks down into Stirling. there are a couple of optional lines that you can take through this as we see Taijo coming into the pits once again. Dirk Diggler gets super wide, picks up a lot of dirt. I'm sure that that's going to be a slowdown for him. He may well just try and take the penalty for that one though, as he tries to put the hammer down and tries to catch up with Speedy Gone Hog. Taijo back into the pits, and I can only assume that that's going to be another lengthy one if it's going to be for damage. Just hearing a moan coming through on the team radio, and I can only assume that it's Taijo, frustrated with how things have gone today at Brands Hatch. Consistency will be key in these extended races. 45 minutes is quite a long time, and I can guarantee that concentration will be tough to maintain for these guys. Dirk Diggler, Speedy Gone Hog and Bruce Law doing a fantastic job of it. In fact, Lecky, we've seen some marked improvement after an early mistake cost him. Currently sat 2 minutes behind the leader, but 1 minute away from from Dirk Diggler, who's currently sat in third position. And we can see that 20-second lead that Bruce Law had on Speedy Gone Hog has since increased by 12 seconds, currently sat at 32. And that just shows the difference in pace between these drivers. If you're thinking that Bruce Law is going to run away with this championship though, don't be mistaken. I can think of quite a few people that are usually within this championship that are definitely going to challenge him. Got Fast AF Gamer, who's definitely going to be up there or thereabouts. Also, don't rule out the likes of Shell and Dow, who can also put in some super fast lap times. In fact, CMCF1, when he's on his game, it didn't look as though today was his day. I don't know whether or not he was having wheel troubles or just having Brands Hatch troubles, but he can also get there or thereabouts within the podium. Looks as though we're missing Quiet Man as well, who's also up there or thereabouts with his lap times. Anything can happen in these 45-minute races as well. As we see Speedy Gone Hog, looks as though he just missed his pit crew there ever so slightly, hitting the brakes a little bit too soon as he comes in for fresh tyres. Looks as though a little bit of fuel, and is he going to get away quite quickly? Looks as though there are some repairs to be done on that car. So he's going to come at risk of Dirk Diggler now. Let's have a look where Dirk Diggler is. He's just coming through the start-finish straight, and he looks to retake that second place position. So an extended pit stop from Speedy Gone Hog as he finally gets himself away is going to cost him that second place. He falls down into third, and Dirk Diggler will be made up with that one, I'm sure. So Bruce Law now maintains a 1 minute lead ahead of the next driver. In fact, if we go over to him at the moment, looks as though he's just got over the back marker of Taijo. Looks as though that was done with relative ease just through Druids. So hopefully Taijo moving over for him, making it nice and comfortable for Bruce Law to put the hammer down, and I think it's going to be Lecky next on the hit list. We'll have to wait and see though. These timings have gone extreme, so Taijo currently 5.5 minutes behind the leader after making 3 stops. In fact, he goes through and absolutely obliterates a braking marker there, really struggling to keep this car on the track. Not sure how he's got it set up, but really doesn't look as though he's been able to balance the setup very well for this Brands Hatch GP circuit. Really struggling for mechanical grip. In fact, it looks as though he's lost it again. Did he encounter any walls? Doesn't look as though he did. Managed to recover and keep it on the black stuff. Taijo really struggling. If he has another pit stop, it's going to cost him even more embarrassment. But don't forget, so long as these guys finish within, they have to cover at least 75% of the race distance in order to maintain it. So long as he doesn't lose too many laps, he should be fine. In fact, with the amount of laps that these guys are putting in, I can see Taijo being pretty safe to still pick up some pretty good points in the championship on the run up to second place. So nothing will be lost by any of these drivers just from their attendance and being able to finish the race. Back over to Bruce Law though at the moment, and it looks as though that is now the approaching car of Lecky as a back marker. Lecky and Dirk Diggler in very similar liveries, but looking at the split times, in fact, let's have a look. It could well be Dirk Diggler. In fact, it is. Looks as though Dirk Diggler is potentially going to be lapped now by Bruce Law. Not going to make it easy. In fact, we only request that our drivers move alongside when they're actually within the overtaking area, just to make sure that it doesn't cost them too badly. We also don't expect our back marker cars to ease off the pace. In fact, it looks as though Dirt Diggler there just running a little bit wide. That's going to give the prime opportunity for Bruce Law to pass, and Dirt Diggler does the right thing there, just moves alongside, doesn't lose too much time, and allows Bruce Law to pass without too much effort. So it looks as though Speedy Gone Hog currently with a warning from the race director, from what I can only assume is track limits. Taijo also suffering the same. Let's have a look at Taijo. Let's see whether or not he's able to get it together. You can see a little bit of a scuff there on his front wing. That's going to potentially cost him some aero. He's definitely been struggling throughout this one, as we've already mentioned. Any damage to the front aero of this car will start to unbalance the car, especially in those high downforce sections of the track. In fact, we see him there lose it completely, probably flat spotting those tyres. Doesn't encounter any walls, so not going to pick up any mechanical damage, but those tyres are definitely going to have suffered from that big four-wheel lockup going sideways. So potentially a flat spot for all four corners there for Taijo on what I can only assume is already worn tyres, unless he's been changing them each time that he's come into the pits. Back over to our race leader, 13 minutes remaining of this session. Bruce Law currently sat ahead, and we can hear all sorts of swearing coming down the radio at the moment. Not sure who it was. Yeah, it looks as though it was Taijo. He's encountered the wall once again on the Brabham straight. Not sure how he's lost it there. I can only assume it was due to DRS, and we can see he's come to a complete stop. He's going to have to try and limp that car all the way around the circuit with no front end aero and potentially some suspension damage as well. In fact, it looks as though his rear wing has also felt the full force of that. So it's going to be another lengthy stop for Taijo 1212, our young Filipino driver, really struggling to keep it together. Back to our race leader, Bruce Law, now with 1 minute and 9 seconds ahead of the second place of Dirt Diggler. In fact, Speedy Gone Hog looks as though he's managing to keep within the sort of pace of Dirt Diggler at the moment. It looks as though we potentially have a little bit of debris as well from Taijo's incident there on the Brabham straight. We'll have to wait and see whether or not that affects any other drivers. Well, let's have a look at Dirt Diggler at the moment. Let's see whether or not we can see the third place of Speedy Gone Hog just coming around the circuit, coming around the mountain as she comes. It doesn't look as though we can, so Dirt Diggler with a pretty comfortable lead at the moment, currently in second place. And with 11 minutes remaining of the session, all he needs to do now is keep it consistent and wrap this one up quite comfortably, I'm sure. So, as we continue to run down our running order, look at Speedy Gone Hog. Currently setting quicker laps than Dirt Diggler. Last time around, 13.5 the lap times from Speedy Gone Hog. Dirt Diggler able to put in a 13.7, and we can see Bruce Law, his lap times have fallen away ever so slightly. I wonder whether or not Bruce Law didn't change tyres, and maybe he's running out on the same ones just because we've seen those lap times come down. But you can see that last time around improving once again, 1 minute 11.2, so not too far away from his regular race pace. At the start of the race, he was putting in around about the 110 mark. And the rest of the drivers come around Taijo now as he makes his, I think it might be his fourth pit stop, maybe even fifth, I'm not too sure. Definitely a race to forget for Taijo. Speedy Gone Hog has picked up a 1 second penalty somewhere within the race as well. I think that was for track limit breach. He must have slowed down, but obviously not slowing down enough just to pick up 1 second. That's not going to affect him too badly though. He currently holds around about 45, just under 45 seconds lead ahead of the fourth place of Lecky 2000. Back over to the race leader, lap 29, with 10 minutes of the session remaining. Bruce Law has just put in a pretty thorough job, as we expected. Gained a big lead right at the start of the race, and now he's just running his own pace for his own race, making it count, making sure he doesn't make any silly mistakes, balancing that tyre wear nicely. and bringing it home without too much risk. And that's what it's usually about. Anybody can usually go balls out the bath for a quick lap, but doing that for 45 minutes is not going to do yourself, your concentration or your car any good, especially when it comes down to your tyres. It's about finding that balance, as with any motorsport, and looks as though Bruce Law has got it locked in. In fact, so has Dirk Diggler and Speedy Gone Hog. These three guys really have had pretty flawless races, really. Haven't seen any huge mistakes from them. Just running their own race at their own pace and making it count. So there, Bruce Law just pushing the limits of the track, picking up a little bit of dirt, but it's not going to cost him too bad. It may just affect his corner entry speed, as we see him cutting the corner perfectly. Just managing to take it off the apex. In fact, let's jump in the cockpit now with Bruce Law as he approaches. I can assume it's Lecky, considering he had previously passed Dirk Diggler. It looks as though it's the orange and white livery of Lecky, keeping down the Gavin straight up to the approach of Paddock Hill. So just putting into the apex of the first corner, running wide onto the apex, onto the curbs of the second, and look at the difference in braking ability there between the two. Managed to gain, it looked to be 1 or 2 car lengths, as we see flashing the lights there from Lecky just to allow him to come past. That's what we like to see. Lecky recognising that there was a quicker car on track, getting those blue flags and moving over to the side of a place where it doesn't affect both drivers too badly whatsoever. But no effect, I don't think, to Bruce Law, and just a slight loss to the pace of Lecky. So Bruce Law now has a 1 minute and 15 lead to the second place of Dirk Diggler. Dirk Diggler has managed to extend his lead over to Speedy Gone Hog up to just under 15 seconds now. Speedy Gone Hog though, huge lead, just around about 43 seconds to the 4th place of Lecky, and then the less said about Tyjo's gap, he's got anything. Currently sat in 5th place. It will get him plenty of points on our championship standings. Get 35 points for a race win. It then starts to run down ever so slightly for the track positions. So 2nd place will pick up 30 points, and I believe it's 28 points for 3rd and 25 for 4th, and so on as we move down the order. So points on offer for all of these drivers, provided that they finish 75% of the race pace and the lap count. And bonus points, of course, up there for the fastest lap of the race and the pole position of the race, which will go to Bruce Law in this qualification session. Now let's bring up the timing boards. Let's have a look at our current fastest lap. Looks as though it is Bruce Law with that 1 minute 10.5. Right on the nose there. That was quite early on. His pace has settled down as his tyre wear's gone up, but 6 minutes remaining. I can't imagine anybody getting a free pit stop just to try and come in for for fresh tyres to try and put down a fastest lap. I don't think neither Dirk Diggler or Speedy Gone Hog with optimum car settings are going to be able to get past that 1:10.5 lap record currently held within the session by Bruce Law, so it would be a fruitless task and put them at risk of being overtaken by any of the other drivers. So just over 5 minutes remaining of this session. We're currently tracking Speedy Gone Hog as he makes his way down the Brabham Straight up to Paddock Hill. Let's see whether or not his line's adjusted. In fact, it looks as though he's got a really quick entry speed into that one. You can see the difference of approach there, just not quite clipping the apex of the beginning of Paddock Hill, but getting a really good line on the exit, and looks as though he's carrying plenty of speed there. As I mentioned, there are a couple of different lines that you can take through certain sections of this circuit. This corner especially, on the Surtees, you can definitely take that inside line and run relatively slow and get that quick gain ahead, or you can run in quite deep, manage to maintain quite a bit of speed, but you will be ever so slightly slower on exit, and that is going to affect you as you make your way through Pilgrim Street all the way onto the run up to the set of three right-handers as we see Speedy Gone Hog there locking up his brakes. He didn't make any contact, so it's just going to be a loss of time as he gets that car back into the right direction and back on track. You can see though picking up plenty of dirt. I wonder whether or not his tyres are going to be ever so slightly affected. Flat spotting will cause a lot of disturbance within the wheel for these drivers. I don't think so much for Taijo, but definitely for any of the guys racing on a wheel. When your tyre wear has got so low as it is bound to be after 40 minutes of on-track action here, 34 laps currently, 33 laps for the rest of these guys. The tyre wear is definitely going to be up there. Tyre temperatures are going to be relatively high after coming through the final two sectors of this Brands Hatch circuit. And when you get so sideways with all four wheels locked, you're definitely going to start to feel the effects of flat spots. So it's going to be tricky now for Speedy Gone Hog in the remaining 3.5 minutes of the session. Let's flip over to Bruce Law. You see Lecky now coming in for, I think it's his third pit stop of the session. Wonder whether or not he's made a slight mistake and taken off maybe his front wing or caused some suspension damage. It's going to be another long stop for him. So I think all drivers on track may have made a stop. Lecky having to stop 3 times. Taijo, I've lost track. I think it might be on his 5th, maybe even 6th pit stop. We will be able to see at the end of this race as we see Taijo there going off once again. Yep, it doesn't show me on the timings board, so unable to check for now, but let's jump back over to our leader. See a lick of flame there from Bruce Law, meaning that he is taking it up close to that red line with only 2 minutes and 45 seconds remaining. I think that Bruce Law is going to be going for hot laps. We can see his lap times have come down. He's not going to be bothered about engine wear at this point. He's just going to want to torch that engine. Of course, every race of the session, these drivers are going to have a new engine, gearbox and suspension put into the car. So in this remaining 2 minutes of the session, these drivers can just run it ragged, push themselves to the limits. And we can see Bruce Law actually last time around has beaten his current session record. Was previously sat on 1 minute 10.5. He's managed to get that down to 1 minute 10.461. And I wonder whether or not his split times are going to be even quicker still this time around. Looks as though Speedy Gone Hog and Taijo once again picking up warnings from the race director for a breach of track limits. Have to wait and see with this whether or not we have any extra penalties added on. It will have to be a substantial penalty to affect either driver though. Speedy Gone Hog holding a dominant lead above Lecky after his extra pit stop late on in this race. And I actually think he'd get a drive-through penalty before that penalty crept up so high to affect him. So there aren't going to be any changes in race position due to the penalties from the race director. So 1 minute remaining of this one, which means that it could well be, in fact I don't think it is going to be the last lap. Looking at it, it's probably going to be the penultimate lap here for Bruce Law, which means it will be the penultimate lap for the rest of the drivers out on track, depending on whereabouts they are in relation to the start-finish line when Bruce Law makes that final cross for the checkered flag. It's been an absolutely flawless race from him. We haven't seen many mistakes from Bruce Law. Currently sat 1 minute 30.7 seconds ahead of second place Dirk Diggler. Speedy Gone Hog currently around about 15 seconds behind second place, and then Lecky and Taijo making up the back markers in what has been a very, very small grid. So once again, ladies and gents, apologies for that. That will look to be improved next week. Looks as though we've had a perfect storm of situation as Bruce Law comes across the start-finish line for the second to last time. We are now on the final lap of this Brands Hatch Formula Renault GP. 45 minutes of action has come down to this, and it looks as though it's going to be quite an anticlimactic start as all of these drivers large distances away from the rest. So I can't see any change in position happening unless we get a mistake from Dirk Diggler or a huge mistake from Speedy Gone Hog, as he currently holds a 1 minute gain ahead of the 4th place of Lecky. So it looks as though this is going to be our finishing order. It looks as though last lap around for Bruce Law, 1 minute 12.6, so he's happy with his fastest lap. He was happy to make an improvement. 3 laps from the end. Doesn't look as though he's going to push it. Definitely doesn't want to make any mistakes. But final few corners for him to secure his first race victory in the Formula Renaults for the Flux Motorsport 2020 Season 1. As we see Speedy Gone Hog there moving to one side. And it looks as though he's got all sorts of damage on that one, so he's just going to try and nurse it on home once he crosses the line. But a race victory for Bruce Law. That is his second of the week. Race victor in the GT1 Championship, and now a race victor in the Formula Renault Championship. He will also feature in the GT3 Championship, live and direct from us here at Flux Motorsport from Silverstone later on tonight at 8 o'clock p.m. I wonder whether or not it's going to be a triple threat attack of victories from Bruce Law in Flux Motorsport's debut week. That will be fantastic for him if he can. He's a very experienced driver, but he'll defy all odds if he manages to get 3 wins in 1 week. Definitely looking to secure himself as Flux Motorsport's prime driver here. Dirk Diggler just coming around the... He's just gone over the start-finish line. Looks as though so is Lecky. We're just waiting for Taijo now. After a forgettable race for him, he now crosses the line, and that is going to be the end of today's proceedings. Let's have a look at the final standings, but it's just as we expected. Bruce Law tops it out in top spot, with Dirk Diggler putting in a solid performance in second. Speedy Gone Hog does enough for 3rd place in the end. Lecky 2000 in 4th place, and Taijo 1212 makes up the back marker in 5th position. Bruce Law gets the bonus point for the fastest lap in qualification, and also gets the bonus point for the fastest lap inside the race. So I've been your host, Murphy GBR, and you can join me, as I mentioned earlier, for tonight's Flux Motorsport GT3 Championship. We'll look to have you there live and direct from YouTube to make up what has been a full day of motorsport here in Britain and around the world. Wherever you're watching, stay safe, and be sure to like and subscribe to the Flux Motorsport YouTube channel to make sure that you don't miss any of the action. And you can follow us as well for all notifications pre and post race as well on all social media outlets, Instagram, Twitter and our Facebook group. If you want to learn more about Flux Motorsport, or you want to join into a sim racing community predominantly for Project Cars 2 on the PlayStation 4, head on over to www.fluxmotorsport.com and you'll find out all the information about what we look to do in the future and our current race calendar. Thank you very much for joining us, and we'll see you later on tonight. Take care, ladies and gents. Good night.